Tonight's bedtime story is called Mr. Men and Little Miss at the Vet's, read by the same artists. Miss Brainy was perfectly suited to being a vet. She was clever and was kind. She loved animals, and she was patient with her patients, and patient with their owners. Unlike Mr. Grumpy, who did not like animals, and was most definitely not patient. So it was lucky that he was not a vet. Ooh. There we go. There we are. At the start of each new day, Miss Brainy never knew what kind of animal she would have to treat. There were small animals, and medium-sized animals, and big animals. Really, Mr. Wrong? It would be much better if I came to treat your bull at the farm. There were regular pets. There were regular pets like cats and dogs and hamsters and rabbits. And there were exotic pets like snakes, spiders and frogs. And then there were pets like that were not animals. Mr. Nonsense was concerned about his pet rock, which was a bit of a surprise, but Miss Brainy was able to reassure him that it was perfectly normal for a pet rock to stay so still. Miss Brainy had a veterinary nurse to help her, Mr. Quiet. He never knew what to expect from day to day. Sometimes he found a waiting room in mayhem. Sometimes it was just peaceful. And sometimes it was just plain odd. Like the time a Cleverland pig drove himself to the surgery. Miss Brainy had noticed that some of the pets were very like their owners. Mr. Bump's dog looked just like him once Miss Brainy had patched him up. This splendid bird of paradise was just as splendid as she was, maybe even more. Mr. Clumsy had a very shaggy dog. Mr. Tickle's python was as long and as wriggly as his arms. And Mr. Greedy's cat was just as greedy as he was. However, some owners were not like their pets. Like Mr. Forgetful, did not even have a memory like his pet elephant. Some days, Miss Brainy had very puzzling visits. Mr. Silly had brought his cat. "I'm worried," he said. "My cat has been acting very strangely of late." "Woof!" barked the cat. "Gosh, that's very peculiar," said Miss Brainy with concern. "That's perfectly normal," explained Mr. Silly. "All cats bark in Nonsense Land." "No, the problem is that she stopped burying bones. There wasn't a cure for that. Miss Naughty brought in her parrot, a parrot who said very naughty and rude things. There wasn't a cure for that either. And Miss Quick brought in her pet tortoise. He's too slow. He can't keep up with me, complained Miss Quick. And again, there wasn't a medical cure for that. Although Miss Brainy did have one suggestion. Sometimes people brought in injured wild animals, like Miss Tiny, who brought in a robin with an injured wing which needed a splint, and Mr. Strong brought in a weasel with a wounded foot which needed to be cleaned and bandaged. Mr. Small brought in a hedgehog with a nasty cold. The hedgehog needed some medicine. And Miss Stubborn brought in an animal in a box. "This snail has lost its shell," she announced. Miss Brainy examined the snail. "This isn't a snail, it's a slug." "Nonsense," cried Miss Stubborn. "I know a shellless snail when I see one." "I assure you it's a slug," said Miss Brainy. "No, it's a snail." Miss Brainy sighed. It was going to be a long day. It could be hard work being a vet. Animals didn't always fall ill during the day. like there were times they needed attention at night, like Farmer Field's flock of sheep during lambing time. They kept Miss Brainy up all night, but it was all made worthwhile seeing the lambs skipping about in the morning. There was a swimming pool at the vet's. It was used to help animals recuperate from their injuries. Like Mr. Quiet was helping a horse with a broken leg to exercise in the pool. And the Cleverland pig had other ideas about how the pool ought to be used. Now and then Miss Brainy had to perform an operation, like the time Mr. Muddle's pet duck swallowed a bone. But that wasn't all Miss Brainy could found. But that wasn't all Miss Brainy found. She also removed a ball, and a whistle, and a squeaky toy. Perhaps Mr. Muddle's duck is as muddled up as his owner. Miss Brainy also called out to the zoo, where she had to treat a rhino with a broken horn, a hippo with a tummy ache, a grizzly bear with a headache, and a tiger with a toothache. A crocodile with a backache, and a giraffe with a neckache. You must have treated every sort of animal on the planet, said the zookeeper. I certainly have, laughed Miss Brainy. I don't think there's anything that could surprise me. I've had pet rocks and barking cats and Cleverland pigs and shellless snails. Now, just between you and me, Miss Brainy may have spoken too soon. Miss Brainy went back to her clinic and was finishing up for the day when Mr. Quiet came in. Mr. Impossible had just brought in his pet. Its teeth need cleaning. Send him in, said Miss Brainy. That won't be easy, grimaced Mr. Quiet. In fact, you'll need to do it in the car park. So Miss Brainy went outside. Mr. Impossible's pet was more than a little unusual. A lot more than a little. It was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now that was a surprise. A big surprise. Time for our bedtime lesson.